Thanks.
All right, welcome back to the Jam on You.
A 10-minute pan.
Time for our first jam session. According to CNN, some 15 million people, that number is right, 15 million people are hiding credit cards, checking accounts, or savings from their live-in partner. Is that any kind of okay? 15 million people.
It's not that deep. People are so dramatic.
That's not that deep.
A little extra stash of cash never hurt anybody.
Yeah, but something tells me it's a little bit more than just a little bit of a stash of cash.
Right, like do you have a few $100s put away, or is it like you have a whole nother account?
I wish my husband would said, surprise, I got $2 million. I wish he would say that.
But what if he said, surprise, I'm in debt, like $15,000?
That's what you don't want to hear.
Well, that's what I think that's how I read it. It's like one of those things where, man, 15 million people are lying about probably being in debt, probably having some money that they're owing somebody. I think it's more of a negative than like, just kidding, I got all this money in the bank.
I'm a woman in 2018. I have to have a little cash stashed away. That's just smart business.
You know, I'm not married yet, but if I were, possibility I'd have separate accounts. I know people in marriages. I won't obviously say who they are, but people who have separate accounts. I think that's an okay way to maneuver through life. I think it's different strokes, different folks. If you want to have a joint account, or if you just want to operate separately because that's how you've done it your whole life. Maybe one person's better with money than the other, and they don't want to mix and blur that line. I think it's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I agree. I always ask married people what they do because I think that money gets so uncomfortable. And like when
it's an uncomfortable topic, right? Just
uncomfortable.
For sure.
Anytime I've ever been uncomfortable, I just force myself to do it because I'm like, if I can't be open and honest with my partner, with him, then there's no one I can be open and honest with. Not that he has to know everything, but I like force myself to do it. Like even though it's the hardest thing, I'm like, okay, we just gotta have this tough conversation. Just dig in into it.
They say it's one of the #1 things that leads to divorce. One of the top things.
Yeah, money
that doesn't surprise me.
Money issues. So, 15 million people.
A lot. What is there, like 300 million in America? That's not that many, I guess. Yeah.
Kind of a
We're
lot,
justifying.
no?
I wish I had any.
All right, according to a study from Northwestern University, teenage girls are feeling more and more pressure when it comes to sexting. And here's a very scary statistic. 40% of all teenagers have participated in sexting.
Oh, wow.
Yep. It's
oh,
major.
my gosh.
You know, I think that we talk about this cat and mouse game, and it's like boys play offense and girls play defense when it comes to sex, and that's what we're taught. And I really think that if we can, from a young age, teach boys to not ask for those things and to see relationships and sex as human connection and not about, you know, a check mark of masculinity.
The whole boys will be boys thing, I think needs to go away. 2/3.
Yeah.
2/3 of girls aged 12 to 18 say a boy's asked them to send a nude photo, and when that boy doesn't get what he's asking for, he turns mean. And a lot of times that's a domino effect. It goes from there to cyberbullying. And because the social media aspect, and that person gets badmouthed and their reputation is tarnished, then they may become suicidal. There's a lot of serious things that jump off points from the sexting stuff.
So the experts are saying that when you sit your daughter down to have that conversation and tell her, don't sext, don't send naked pictures or any body parts through a cell phone or digital or anything. They're saying to continue that conversation and point out the fact that boys should not be asking you to do that, and also have that conversation with males, with young boys, and telling them, don't do that. It's wrong because it puts someone else in a bad position, in an uncomfortable position.
It's all about changing the way we talk about things. You know, this goes beyond sexting. We always tell girls what to do and what not to do instead of just telling boys, don't ask.
But these days, we've got the legal repercussions, too. Like, we report on these stories that say 13-year-old boy for federal conviction or federal crime convicted of federal
like a sex offender list.
Yeah, a sex offender list for sharing, for dispersing, if he's sending it to his friends or if it gets around the school. I know that's happening in high schools right here in Chicago.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, Danielle, you said, which both you guys have added a lot to this, which I think is stuff that I hadn't heard, that I hadn't thought about, that I will definitely take to my 10-year-old son. But I think it's also starting early. You know, we're talking about grown men. We're talking about Harvey Weinstein. We're talking about Kevin Spacey. These are adults who's probably been a pattern. No, they didn't have cell phones when they were younger, but it was a pattern of behaving however they wanted with the opposite sex that snowballed. Now, I know you have not only that insight to share, but you also have a potential solution or way to cope with what's going on.
Yeah, well, earlier we were talking about tough conversations, and sometimes it's so awkward to talk about these kinds of things, especially when you're a parent and you don't know how to go about it. And so there's actually a text line that helps de-escalate the entire situation and help a child find someone they can talk to come up with a plan. So if you don't want to do it, just text Thorn to 741741, and there's a counselor that you can have your kids speak with, and you can speak with them even if you want to try and frame that conversation. So I think that's a really cool option.
Yeah, I like that. It's always okay to call for help. All right, Facebook has admitted to what many of us already know. Social media is bad for politics. With the rise in fake news and Facebook's role in allowing that content to be posted, this should come as no surprise to anybody. One Facebook official was quoted as saying this: "If there's one fundamental truth about social media's impact on democracy, it's that it amplifies human intent, both good and bad. I wish I could guarantee that the positives are destined to outweigh the negatives, but I can't."
Yeah, I think, so Mark Zuckerberg has come out and said Facebook is just a platform, but the thing is it's not neutral. The algorithm works so that you see on your newsfeed the things that you like to see, and when engagement is a platform's top priority, things that have to do with outrage unfortunately get a lot of clicks, and so that's what's going to pop up on your newsfeed more, and it causes a ton of divisiveness. It causes your feed to be really one-sided, and so it does end up being bad for democracy, and you kind of have the truths that you want to believe instead of the facts.
And I almost feel like to a degree that goes past social media. I mean, these news outlets geared towards, okay, if I'm on the right side, if I'm on the left side, if I'm far on that right side, I'm only pursuing stuff that reinstates and reaffirms what I believe on the far right. And that goes the same for the far left. So I think it is only pushing people like, see, I knew this is what it is, and this is what they're telling me on this far right, or this is what they're telling me on that far left, and there becomes no middle. And I think that is a shame. It starts with social media, and I like that Mark Zuckerberg's trying to take initiative to try and change this.
I like that we would have, I wish that we could have more self-policing in terms of how we consume information and consume news, in terms of checking sources. Obviously, I'm a journalist, so I'm not probably the normal person, but I read Fox News as much as I read CNN because I'm trying to get both sides of issues. I want to get a lot of different coverage. At the same time, I think, like, I wish we could police ourselves in terms of pulling back. Meaning, like, I always often think about what would we do if there was no Facebook, or if we could take Facebook away, or Facebook was down for a week, or social media was away. Like, what would we do? How would we get our information? How would we move about life? How would we spend time with our families? It's just, I think it would be better to have those breaks. Balance. It's all about balance.
It is all about balance. Well, guess what, guys?
What?
We got more of the Jam coming up here in just a little bit. It goes without saying that John Hanson brightens our day. That's exactly what he's going to be doing on National Compliment Day. That's right. We'll check in with him a little bit later.
Plus, we're going to meet an Inglewood woman who's changing people's perception of her beloved neighborhood each day.
But before we head to break, here's your forecast with the help of our Whirly Ball Jam Cam. We'll be right back, guys.
This weather report is brought to you by the law offices of GWC.